Okay, hello, good evening. Here we are again, Discover Tai Chi for LimbPower. I'm Phil, and we're going to have a nice, easy movement session. It's hot, it's humid, it's not the best of conditions for people with limb loss or limb difference to manage. Losing a limb or having a limb, even an intact limb that hasn't got the best circulation, means that we're not able to thermoregulate, there's the word, to thermoregulate as well as someone who's fully intact, simply because we don't have the surface area, skin, to perspire from to manage heat. So we have to be particularly mindful of that. So we'll start just simply with our side-to-side movement. It's always going to be a base movement for us just because it's so important. And we were talking a bit about phantom pain and sometimes just gentle loading of a limb, even if it is feeling painful, can sometimes help. It might not feel like it at the time. It might be that the benefit comes some hours afterwards, but it can seem to help. When scientists look at mechanisms, it's very hard to pin down. So I'm always wary when people come along, when they start suggesting that there's some concrete answers there, because it's a much more complex thing. So I'm just moving on the spot now, not necessarily in one place. I'm just kind of moving comfortably from one foot to the other. Again, just nice, easy, comfortable loading as much as possible. Okay, so we can do no better under these circumstances than to keep movement symmetrical, because that helps the brain kind of turn the volume down, and that's exactly what we need under these conditions. So if we just lift up into Qi Shi and we'll just go very gently, see if you can almost get that sense that we've explored, that you can feel a cooling on the back of the hand as they rise, and then a bit of a cooling on the palm of the hand as it lowers. That really helps you tune in. So if you have upper limb loss, again, we'd be thinking about the residual limb in this case. Could be a breath in. Again, we notice that, again, when we're in pain, our breath is impacted. Okay, let's open that movement out. Keep the hands nice and low. If we keep the hands low, that helps keep things calm. So you may have heard of something called the startle response, which is, if something makes you jump, you tend to lift the hands high around the face, just in case you need to protect your head. So if we keep our hands well below head height, that seems to, and again, people can't explain why for sure, to help keep things calm just by keeping hands low. So we can do that. That's it. And if we were saying to someone to calm down, we would do that movement, wouldn't we? Calm down as we press the hands down. We wouldn't be raising our hands above our head and saying, calm down. We would be pressing the hands down to say, calm down. So again, it says some indications. Once again, I'm just going to move on the spot. So keeping hands down, using downward type movements, can all help with the messaging that we give ourselves as well as others that we're keeping calm, we're turning the volume down. So that might be something to think about. I know when I get episodes of phantom pain, my hands end up holding my head. And I have to kind of then catch myself and bring my hands down to try and reinforce that message, even though things are not great. But this will help in the long run if I keep my hands low. Okay, let's go above our heads now. Having said all of that, we can purposefully explore the boundaries of going high and then bringing the hands down. And if we bend forward a little bit, that helps the hands go even lower. And then pick the hands up. So sometimes we need to kind of explore the extremities of our space by going large. That seems again to help the brain orientate itself to our bodies and also to the space around us. Could be a big breath in, using the breath as well as feedback. Fab. Once again, just nice and easy. Okay, we're going to come to a rest. We'll do a little bit of a hinge movement just to fold. So we're going to lift the hands. Once again, we are going high, but then we bring them down onto the backs of the thighs. If you sat down, then onto the sides of the thighs, and then just down the legs, moving very comfortably. Once again, we're not looking to stretch. We're endeavoring to give messages to the brain and the body that everything's okay, and that by moving within these comfortable ranges of motion, that's the feedback that we reinforce by not stretching. You may or may not know this, but the word for stress comes from the Latin, meaning to be stretched. Whether that has any bearing on physical stretching is another matter, but it's an interesting thought. So again, in Tai Chi and Qigong, we don't stretch, we move into positions. We don't hold the position. Again, that might be giving the body a message of, what's going on here? We just move into and out of positions as comfortably as we can. Okay, if you're standing up, let's have hands clasped behind us, and we'll just turn the head, looking to one side and then to the other, very easily. To make this movement as natural as possible, you can imagine that someone calls your name and you turn to look. That will give the feeling of the movement being very natural rather than an isolated exercise. Just turning my head very comfortably. Let the hands go and then wise out, and as if by magic, we get more range of motion. But the hands are opening in this symmetrical fashion. Keeping some balance. I'm going to do my last one. And then, once again, walking on the spot. If we're sat down, again, we could just be lifting our limbs, even if we're not wearing a prosthetic. We could be shifting weight from one hip to the other, even a little bit. We do what we can under the circumstances that we find each day. Okay, let me sit down in any case to join people who are seated. If you still wish to stand, please do. So we'll go back to our opening movement, Qi, and we'll do some part the wild horse's main movements. Again, it's a movement that challenges us a little bit, but it seems to help the brain get a sense of itself in time and space. The word for that is proprioception. And these movements seem to be a means to which to facilitate that. So let's do Qi 3 times. Again, keeping my hands no higher than my shoulders. If you sat down with me, you could bring the hands all the way down if you've got the room to do so, or just bring them up above the knees. But we're just, again, very slow. Movements seem to have an impact on our emotional and mental state. Okay, so if you remember, we're going to get the right hand on top. Holdable. There it is. And then we've got 2 brushes, and we brush the top hand, the right hand back, and we just lay out the left hand in front as if offering someone something. Turn the hands, bring them back. Got the left hand on top now. Brush the top hand back. Right hand goes forward as if offering something. And then turn the hands and we're back where we started. Right hand on top. And then we just brush alternately from one side to the other. It's become a bit of a routine for me on the morning now. Just this simple sequence. Sometimes I do it seated, sometimes I do it standing, sometimes I'll take a step when I'm standing if I feel like it. But it all depends on the quality of sleep that I've had and just the general state of how I feel. Do I have lots of energy or do I feel fatigued and tired? And I'll move appropriately. And if we just do a few of those, not counting reps or sets, just moving very intuitively, it can be quite nice. Let's just rest there. Let's just sweep the hands to and fro. Breeze blowing through a willow tree. And again, see if you can feel the cooling effect on the arms. If you've got bare arms, you'll be able to feel a cooling of the surface of the skin, which again in turn will help us cool down. So maybe the people who came up with this movement needed cooling down, and this was a way to do so. We can only speculate, but it's a nice movement nevertheless. Okay. Another way to help us cool down is to use imagery. So we could place ourselves in our imagination in a cool space. We've been to a few spaces in our imaginations over the course of these weeks and months. We could be beside a lake, beside the seaside. We could be in a forest. We could change the time of day. It could be early morning when it's cool, or it could be evening when it's cool. So again, use some imagery. So I'm going to take you to one of my favorite places. It's a lakeside, but let's have a nice cool evening in mind. And let's do wave hands in cloud. So we're going to do Qi. And if we have ourselves beside a lake and it's cool, As we bring our hands into place, I've got my right hand on top. I can begin to shift some weight to that right side. Exchange hands, get the left hand on top. Shift to the left and just sweep from one side to the other. And another top tip is, as you do the movement, take notice of what happens with your elbows. See if you can have a sense of heavy elbows, i.e., there is a sense of them pointing or heading downwards rather than sticking out to the sides. And that heaviness, again, helps us calm down, having heavy elbows. That's it. And again, because we're moving through the air, there's a cooling effect, again, especially if we've got some bare skin. And again, we're not counting how many times I've gone to the left or right. Again, we're more interested in just feeling. And when we feel as though we've done enough, we can come back and just come to a rest. And again, unlike other sort of exercise modalities where we've got fixed sets and reps and times, Tai Chi kind of takes a different tack. And again, I think that's one of the things that gives us a plus for it as a nice adjunct to some of the more vigorous activities that we can end up doing. Okay, so I know Kate asked for some seaweed. So for you, Kate, when you watch later, we'll build in our seaweed movement. So again, keeping with the cool theme. So we'll start from the beginning, we'll do our wave hands, and then we'll build in our seaweedy movement, if we can say that. Ready? Here we go. So we'll just do this once. We'll bring the hands up into that embrace, right hand on top. Off we go, turning to the right. Swapping hands, and again, checking with those elbows. Make sure they're not pointing upwards, sticking outwards, which again is another kind of indication of not being completely relaxed. And again, although we might think in terms of doing 3 cycles of these, I'm not going to count. So if we do a bit less, that's okay. If we do a bit more, that's okay. But what we need to remember is that we finish on the left. So hopefully we end up on the left. And as we drop that left hand, we're going to catch our first ball, if you remember. There it is. Let's do an open and close movement again. This is just very symmetrical, simple movement. Okay, seaweed time, down to the right, if you remember. And then we sweep the hands across of it as if across the surface, like a worktop. Here the hands relax, we bring them back up to the right, but at shoulder level. And then we do this loop-de-loop with the hands around. And then we clear a bookshelf. Well, that's how I think of it. And then we turn the hands and sweep back and catch our second beach ball. Once again, let that ball inflate or expand, and then squeeze back to its original size and shape. Down to the left side this time with the hands. Sweep them across to the right. Let the hands relax back up to the left on the shoulder side, and then loop the loop around. And then we're sweeping our bookshelf clear to the right. Turn the hands around, sweep them back. Catch our third beach ball. Here we go, open and close. As we close into our embrace, left hand on top. Here we go. So I'm not going to count or keep a strict count. I'll see if I can do it in 3 cycles as we go from one side to the other. But the only thing you need to remember, if you do lose count when you're doing this by yourself, is to finish on the right, which is what I'm going to do now. By dropping my right hand, it picks up and we can do a final beach ball. Open and close. And this time as we close, we can cross the hands and do a little flower to finish. Hands turn in all the way around until we scissor them apart, and then down. Very simple. So there you go, Kate. Seaweed as well. So I hope you enjoy. Let me know next time. Let me stand up again as we move into the last few minutes. Once again, if we've been standing up and we've been stood in that position, move around. Again, I certainly find when I ask other people with lower limb loss in particular, what's the hardest thing to do? It's to stand still and be in one spot. If we can move a little bit, it seems to help. I think we're relieving pressure through the leg, although if you've got bilateral prostheses, then you don't get to relieve pressure. You simply shift it from one leg to the other. But that movement seems to help us. So there's nothing worse sometimes, as I used to do on a commute on a train at 5 o'clock on an evening, where you end up sardines, can't move, and I've got 25 minutes of being stuck in that single position, all hot and horrible and sweaty. And yeah, it's not ideal. So again, just give yourselves permission to move, and don't feel as though you have to stand on the spot. So there you go. Let's make it nighttime. We'll do our gather celestial energy and gather earth's energy movement. Again, nice and cool. Bringing my hands up to look up to the sky. And then bring the hands down. Sweep the hands around, gather our stars. And then let the stars go. As we do so, we reach out to each side, take our blanket and wrap ourselves in it, just in case it's going to get a bit too cool. Could be a breath in. As we let the breath go, that's a lovely signal to the brain that we are letting go. Sung. Let's pick the hands up and do that again. Bring some stars down to earth. Gather our stars. And then let them go. Here's our blanket of the earth. Wrap ourselves in that blanket. Breath in if you wish, and then as we let the breath go, really let the blanket fall away. And again, even for me, just after 2 of those, my stump, my residual limb is beginning to kind of complain. So it's a cue for me to just move a bit on the spot. So again, you do you. In fact, when I was working in the public sector, my team knew that I would stand up during meetings because sitting down could be onerous. And then I would be pacing around. I kind of just got used to the fact that that's what I did because it meant that I was more comfortable than being in a fixed position. So I hope that's the case for you, that you can feel that you can move around uh, and hopefully gain a bit of kind of comfort when things get tough. To bring things to a close, another nice thing to do is to kind of start the day and end the day in a similar fashion. So this is something that I do. I'll often start the day where we do cheese shears like we did at the beginning, getting bigger and bigger, and then I reverse it. So let's do that. And it kind of gives us a sense of closure for the day, and that can help sometimes, not all the times, help with sleep. Again, I can't give you any guarantees here. So we're going to go large. And I think one of the reasons why this idea seems to help is that it becomes a routine. And therefore it begins to be something familiar in the day. And that if we miss it out, it's kind of like you've missed something important out, like your morning coffee, for instance. Could be a breath in and then a breath out. And then we make it smaller. So now we're going to just opening hearts. And there. So we're kind of physically embodying that we're going to bring things to a close by reversing how we started the day. And then we finish with just very simple little lift and a lower. Might do it 1, 2, 3 times. I'm just going to do 2 times. Again, need to move. So I'm going to move. Again, I'm not going to put numbers on things because, again, things change from day to day. Again, that's something really important when we live our lives as people living with disability. And if we're working with people who have disabilities, again, we've got to be mindful that everyone has good days and bad days, and it's varying all the time. And therefore, we've got to be mindful of that and give people permission to work in a way that suits them, not you. So there you go. I've chatted a bit. I hope it's been a useful kind of dialogue or kind of narrative. I hope there's some useful ideas in there. Thank you for joining me. So we'll be back next week. I hope you're enjoying the Olympics because you'll see athletes use imagery a lot to help them prepare for their performance, whatever that performance is. And then we've got the Paralympics 2 weeks after the close of these Olympics. So it's a full-on month or so of sport, isn't it? So let me stop the recording, let you get off and enjoy the rest of the evening. But if anything prompts a question,